So can you guys elaborate, on some of the solutions that you do provide and where you see the most value, kind of where you're focused on attacking, over the next 6 months to a year? What do you guys
And
really
to
focus on?
frame that question, who are the customers that you're targeting? Is it E&Ps, midstream companies,
Yeah.
oilfield service companies?
Yeah, so essentially we are kind of a B2B business, and being agnostic in the software side, we have the opportunity to work for E&P customers, any type, independents. We have some kind of international operations with national oil companies, IOCs, international oil companies in deep water. We also work with service companies. We believe in co-creation as part of the innovation component. So we have all sort of profiles in the kind of portfolio of customers we are working for right now. I think it's very dynamic. It's hard to say in 6 months what we're going to be doing,
Loaded
what kind
question,
of product
right?
we're going to be doing. Yeah, but during the COVID-19, there were so many. We saw the opportunity because the industry was going from the operational kind of component to the more financial-oriented business. So there were so many customers trying to make decisions around whether they need to continue producing the wells or shutting the wells. So that was that was very instrumental for us to realize the full potential of the technology we were developing in the production side. And I think in the probably 2020 is going to be around production. So the technology we have is a digital ecosystem that connects drilling, completions, and production. So the production component, I think, is going to be really relevant for the business, especially in the US and conventional land market.
Mhm.
Now, as the market rebounds, because we know the market is going to rebound at some point, obviously the well construction activity is going to increase. So we are developing technologies around drilling applications and completion operations as well.
Yeah.
Now, that's the land market. In the offshore market, drilling activity is still quite high, and we are actually working in the water with drilling technologies. So there is a significant difference between the land market and the offshore market, and actually the challenges are very different. But I think, the production in the land market and well construction in deep water will be kind of relevant areas.
What's the big use case there? So I understand. So drilling completions and production, tying them all together. Is it more from a workflow perspective, or is it more from, say, like a well design, well completion, and then seeing how that translates to whether the well is successful through the production numbers?
Right. That's a good question, and that's kind of the differentiator at the kind of platform level, if we want to call it like that. So in the past, the traditional way to operate in unconventional was about drilling the wells. Sometimes they evaluate the wells, completing the wells, and once you finish the well construction, then you take all the information and forecast production. And that particular forecast in production is actually the translation to the revenue side, the financial operations. We wanted to kind of change the workflow, and we went backwards in the question, and it's kind of the AI component we have. And there are some inspirations from Tesla and different kind of industries around the kind of workflow. But the kind of value proposition is about understanding what's the maximum potential of your reservoir before you even deploy capital. That's the big question in unconventionals right now, capital allocation. So how much profit you can make out of that particular reservoir. So we took a lot of kind of digital components, a lot of reservoir engineering, physics development to kind of come up with a product that can tell customers what's the maximum level of production they can achieve in the well, which is something they didn't have before. So if you know exactly what's the maximum level of production that you can achieve, which is basically the maximum revenue you can achieve, then you can plan better operations. So in the planning phase, to answer your question, it's more about that kind of financial certainty for capital allocation. And then when you know exactly what's that level of maximum or the upper limit in production, and you know what are the drivers for that production, then you work in automations in well construction. So we have automation for drilling and completions. That's kind of the differentiator at the platform level, like reversing the workflow for a more kind of ROI, return of investment kind of model.
And you made a comment, I think, on one of the recent episodes that if you were an operator, you would focus on increasing EUR in your existing wells, right? So taking a look at the inventory that you already own and determine why some wells produce better than others and what drove that production. So like Camilo said, being able to go backwards and take a look at production drivers in offset wells in the same lease or in the same field. How did you get that production? Why does this well produce 10, 20% more than this well? Figuring what that out is, and then implementing that into your drilling program so you can replicate that and have a better prediction of what the returns will be and what capital it will take in order to make that return happen.
I kind of coming to the conclusion that some rock's just better than the other rock, though.
Well, I
we're
mean,
just
it's true.
chalk it up to that. Like
We just,
shit rock.
we just pump more water and more sand.
Yeah.
You know?
and
I
it's
mean,
true, but that's kind of the question, trying to understand why it's different. But you are totally right. Yeah.
Well, there's so many variables that go
Yeah.
into it, right?
Yeah.
You know, not only the quality of rock,
Mhm.
but what was the drilling method? You know, what was the well
Yeah.
construction? What was the completion method? How
Efficiency,
much proppant
fracturing.
did you
Yeah.
pump?
Exactly.
There's so many variables that go into that, right? And you got to start, you know, with all these different technologies, you know, bringing machine learning and analytics and, you know, whatever buzzwords you want to throw out there, you start to understand each one of those
Right.
variables better.
Right. And that's kind of the game changing approach we are taking. It's about taking all that complexity and making it easier for the for the customers to make decisions. I think that's what the future is about. It's about making things easier to make better operations and obviously getting more financial performance in the industry.
Yeah, something that we used to hammer on like in the early days of the show back in like 2018, you know, especially back then, you know, 2016, 2018, you still had all your legacy software and it was hard to use. And any time someone came out with a new software, you needed, you know, big implementations, you needed training on how to actually use the software. And we used to hammer on it all the time. It's like, there needs to be intuitive software that's easy to use. Like a reservoir engineer should be able to use it. They don't need to be a data scientist, right?
Right.
They should
No,
be able to-
100%. So just as an example, right? My history in oil and gas has been in drilling for the last almost 8 years now. And, you know, coming over to Innovate, I knew that I had a lot to learn about, you know, production and completions. But, you know, we have a lot of smart people, but we have some really intuitive products to the point where I can now run a simulation essentially. I can open our flow module, which is the production forecasting module. I can create a scenario, which is a well. I can upload public production data. I can go to the Railroad Commission with an API number, get an Excel spreadsheet. I can upload that into Flow, and I can run a simulation and identify production drivers with the software we have now. And I can do that in about 2 minutes total.
Yeah.
You know, from the point of me opening the program, creating the scenario, and running the simulation. The simulation takes less than a second, but I mean, the other steps in the workflow combined about 2 minutes. And right now, I know reservoir engineers that are taking days, if not a week or more, to do a model on one reservoir. That doesn't translate to wells, you know, offset wells in the same lease. So this is a way to do that much more quickly. And I think what we'll see in the next version, which will be out here in a week or two, we've added economics to that, right? So we've added the ability to put a dollar value on, you know, potential production values.
Yeah, I think that, you know, sorry to interrupt you, Camilo, but I think that if you look from the operations standpoint, that's a point, but also finance side, you know, finance group. Say that you have a family office and they're wanting exposure in oil and gas, but they don't understand this complex asset. Now they can take a product like this and within 2 minutes, you know, they can start getting some idea of, you know, what a potential asset will do or what it has.
You know, we talked about, you know, who our targets are essentially, and Camilo mentioned operators and oilfield service company, but also investors in the oil and gas space, private equity firms, venture capitalists that are either investing or divesting assets at the moment. You know, if you're looking to make a deal and it takes you 2 weeks to put a valuation on the wells that you're either going to be buying or selling, that's a significant amount of time, and values can change drastically.
I was gonna say with volatility and commodities.
So I mean,
your NAV can
again,
change
this is a tool that will allow you know multiple disciplines within the industry to be able to provide asset values very, very quickly.